Welcome to The Source, where we combine the headlines with in-depth conversations with the newsmakers themselves. Sitting in for Pinky Webb, I'm Tanjuatco-Trillo. Today on the program, the Food and Drug Administration is now evaluating the coronavirus vaccine developed by Pfizer after the American company filed its application for emergency use in the country. Also, President Rodrigo Duterte claims a number of people, including military and government officials, have received a vaccine made in China. And later, we get to know more about the COVID-19 variant from the United Kingdom. A warning from the president amid the threat of a new coronavirus strain. President Rodrigo Duterte says a stricter lockdown is a possibility if cases of the new variant spike. The coronavirus variant was discovered in the UK, and it has reached other areas like Japan, Singapore, Hong Kong, and Australia. But so far, it has not reached the Philippines. The government already banned flights from the UK from entering the country until December 31st. And this has been extended for another 2 weeks. But Health Secretary Francisco Duque says they won't expand the suspension to flights from other countries just yet. Let's go straight to the source of the story. Food and Drug Administration Chief Eric Domingo joins us. Sir, good morning. Thanks for being with us on the source.
Hi, good morning. Good morning, everybody.
All right, sir, we have Pfizer applying for the emergency use authorization, and the FDA has 21 days to process that application. Can you tell us more about the status of this?
Well, 21 days is like what we hope to finish. Now, right now, we just received it actually late afternoon to early evening of the 23rd. So we are sorting out the papers, and we're going to send them out to our experts, to our reviewers, and then our regulatory officers here at the FDA are going to take a look at the technical documents, especially pertaining to the quality of the product. And once everything is assessed and seen, and if we see that there is reasonable evidence to show a very good risk and benefit profile for the product, then we will be able to grant an emergency use authorization for the Pfizer vaccine.
Now, sir, several countries, including the U.S., have already granted their EUA to Pfizer. This being the case, do you think there will be any challenges for Pfizer in securing the same here in the Philippines?
Well, no, actually, that makes it a lot easier. So we do have a reliance mechanism wherein there are some very stringent regulatory authorities that we recognize and that we acknowledge, and we accept their decisions and their assessments and take a look at them. So this include, for example, the US FDA, the UK, the European Medicines Agency, countries like Singapore, Japan, and Korea, who have very stringent regulatory authorities. So once a vaccine has an EUA from one of these countries, it's a lot easier for them to apply here. And the process is a little shorter. No? It's more abbreviated because we know that it's also been looked upon by a reliable country.
All right, so we are actually able to draw from their studies and their reports as well. So, sir, what else will be the main focus of the FDA in the coming weeks?
Well, there are things that we have to check. No? We have to make sure, for example, that the vaccine that is being applied for here in the Philippines is exactly the same vaccine that has been given an EUA in these countries. We have to make sure that there's going to be proven stability of the product because it's going to be manufactured probably in Europe or in North America where the climate is different and there's going to be some travel involved. So we have to make sure that if we do approve it, if it is sent from the factory, that it will get here in a stable form and that there is enough planning to make sure that it gets to the area of vaccination, also in a stable form. We also have to check, of course, some nuances. We just want to see if it has been tried on a population similar to ours, like Asians and Pacific Islanders, and see if the safety and the efficacy profile is the same as the other racial groups. No? So there are just some very particular things to our own national and cultural and racial situation that we're going to check for.
All right, so that does seem like a lot of things to look into. Will you be using all the 21 days in order to study and issue the EUA, sir? Or do you think it might be shortened and you might possibly come out with it this week?
Let's just say that 21 working days is really our target. It can be shorter than that if we see that the evidence is very clear and we have no questions, and whatever questions we have are answered quickly. But if after 21 days that we still need some more answers, of course it takes a little more than that. We will take all the time that we need. Now, that's the target that we have. But of course, we will never sacrifice safety and efficacy for this. No, we're going to make sure that we have all the answers before we come up with our authorization.
Okay, sir, looking forward naman po for the Filipino public, can you tell us what this means kapag nagbigay na kayo ng emergency use authorization? What happens next?
Well, once there's an emergency use authorization for a product, it means that this vaccine, although it's still under development, can be sold to the government, and the government can use it under this emergency pandemic situation. It makes it easier for them to be able to import it and distribute it here, because you cannot use a vaccine in the Philippines without an authorization from FDA. Of course, it doesn't mean that it will be immediately available. That will depend on a lot of other factors, such as procurement by the government, availability of the stocks from the manufacturer, and of course, our readiness to roll out the vaccination program. But at least you have that necessary first step that gives the assurance that this is a product that has been checked by the FDA and that it can be purchased and it can by the government and it can be used here in our country.
So, sir, if ever there are any serious adverse reactions to this vaccine when it's administered in the Philippines, how liable is the FDA then if you're the body that issued the EUA?
When we issue an emergency use authorization, if you look at the executive order given by the president, it says that as long as you have a reasonable evidence to show that it can be useful against this pandemic, then we can give an EUA for that. No? Also, if the benefit outweighs the possible risks, there will always be risks for any vaccination. No? But of course, we will give the government and the manufacturer a list of things that they have to comply with when they distribute and use these products. And of course, very, very strict surveillance. And of course, each and every person who will get a vaccine will have to give their consent. They will have to understand the benefits that they can get from it, and of course the possible risks that they would face when they get a vaccine. So it all should be taken and only be given if the patient has full consent.
All right, sir. Now, once the EUA is issued, can it only be the Philippine government that imports this particular vaccine, or can private entities do the same?
No, an emergency use authorization is not a marketing authorization. It authorizes the use of a vaccine in a public health program during the pandemic, which means the Department of Health must be the one who will use it. They will import it. Of course, if they are going to work with private sectors later on, that will be up to them, but it will all be under the auspices of the government.
All right, Sir Eric Domingo, we'll be taking a short break, but we still have lots to talk about. Coming up, President Duterte claims many Filipinos already received their COVID-19 vaccine from China. You're watching The Source on CNN Philippines. Our guest today, Food and Drug Administration Chief Eric Domingo. Sir, good morning once again. All right, still, as I said, we have a lot of things to talk about. Now, there have been reports that people in the Philippines have already been administered a vaccine from China. On your end, has the DFA found any cases of people indeed getting vaccinated here in the Philippines?
Yeah, well, we've heard of these reports too, and we even get reports of people peddling them online. And we've had several operations to this effect. We've had inspections in clinics in Makati, in Binondo, and in Manila. And so far, even we have not had any vaccines, and we haven't seen any vaccinations going on. The really sad thing here is, if there are vaccines going around there, we have no idea what these are, or even if these are legitimate or genuine products, because there's no authorized vaccine for COVID here in the Philippines yet that has been given authorization by FDA. That's why we've given out several advices reminding everybody. If somebody's selling you a vaccine, don't get it. We have no idea where this came from, how these were handled, and if these are safe for you.
Yeah, sir, could you take us exactly through the risks and dangers of taking an unauthorized vaccine?
Well, vaccines are kept in very, very strict conditions. They only work when they are followed through from the factory up to the vaccination area using the cold chain that's correct, the proper storage practice. And this is only done by experienced and licensed distributors and importers. These are the people who know how to handle vaccines. So if people are getting vaccines from some unknown source which we cannot trace, and then they handle it in any way that they want to, and then they inject it somewhere with an unlicensed facility, the possibility of getting something either counterfeit or something that has been spoiled is very, very high. And the side effects, of course, are also possible not to happen, especially if you do not know how these things have been handled. And if something happens, there's no way to trace where these came from. So there's all sorts of danger when you use these unregistered and unnotified drugs.
Right. A lot of risks there. No, the president actually admitted himself that there were a number of people who already were vaccinated by the Chinese vaccine. But this is against the law, is it not?
Well, accepting an injection is, well, for the consumer, for the patient, it's not. There's nothing that we can do about it. It's a personal choice. But it is illegal to import an unregistered drug, to distribute it, and for a doctor, for a medical practitioner, or any health personnel to administer unlicensed drugs in the country. So if we do catch any of them, we will be filing cases against them.
All right. So as you said, for the record, there is no approved vaccine yet in the country for COVID-19. Is that correct?
None. There's no authorized COVID-19 vaccine in the Philippines.
All right, sir. Now, what message does this send out then to the general public that there is, it seems, a vaccine that is already out there and being administered?
Well, I think we should be worried because people are going to take advantage of the situation. I think if you look at the internet, they're going to sell all sorts of medicines, vaccines against COVID-19. And, the public should be aware that during times of difficulty, some people look at it as a time of possible, money-making schemes, criminal activities. And, just do not patronize any of these products. If you have any doubts, check our website for the list of FDA-registered products that you can use safely.
Sir, do you think this jeopardizes any negotiations that are going on with the Chinese drug companies? Because they did lodge a complaint to DFA Secretary Locsin saying that, the vaccines should really be dealt with government to government only.
Well, I'm not privy to the negotiations, but that's exactly true. No, there should not be any vaccine distribution or selling or importing outside of the authorized manner. And in this case, like I said, if it's an EUA, it will only be through the government.
All right, so I want to talk about the Sinovac vaccine in particular. Lawmakers were slamming the government's preference over the Chinese-made vaccine Sinovac. And the thing is, there's reports that it only has 50% efficacy. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, we really have to wait for the actual interim scientific report on the clinical trial phase 3. I haven't seen any. I know that because they did several arms on the clinical trial of this particular vaccine. They say that in Brazil it's at least 50% efficacy, which means it could be 50% or higher. I don't know what that number is. In Turkey, they say it's more than 90% efficacy rate. So what the company has to do is really put all of these trials together and then come up with their own interim clinical trial phase 3 results. And only then can we see and assess how useful this vaccine will be. So far, all we hear are like press releases or some statements, but we haven't seen the scientific output. And we can only base our assessment and our evaluation on published scientific reports.
Okay, pero sir, itong 50% efficacy, pasok na ba to sa standard ng FDA?
Actually, ang standard kasi ng WHO, they really set it at 50%. No? Because at the start, when people were trying to develop this vaccine, everybody expected that we're not going to come up with a very, very effective vaccine early on. And that WHO and the US FDA set it at 50%. That if anybody develops a vaccine that has an efficacy of 50% or higher, then this may be considered. Kaya doon sila nag-umpisa ng cut-off. So sinabi nga nito sa Sinovac, kami were more than 50%. But once all of these products are out, and then you have 50%, 70%, 80%, 90%, it will be up to government then to select which they will buy, which they will use, and it will probably depend on a lot of factors, not just the efficacy rate, but also the availability, the ease of transporting it and keeping it in the right storage temperature, for example, and the ease of administering the product. So the price will probably also be considered. Yes. So I'm sure they will consider a lot of different factors before they decide on what product to use.
All right, but how do we explain that to the Filipino people when options are laid out na merong mas effective na vaccine, and yet it seems the government has a preference for the Chinese-made ones, which have that 50% efficacy, while other brands have 90 or higher?
Well, the one thing that we have to consider is that even Pfizer, for example, is not ready to supply us right now, and will probably not be able to supply us with a 94% effective vaccine for 100 million Filipinos. No? Maybe they'll be able to supply 10, 20 million for the year. What about the other 80 million? We can just wait for 2022. So we have to look for other sources of vaccine. Some of them may be 85% effective, some of them may be 80% effective, but we have to find a vaccine for everybody. So what I know is that the Secretary Charlie Galvez is really looking at several possible sources, maybe 4 or 5 different vaccines, so that we will be able to get enough vaccines to cover the whole population.
Right, which goes back to what you said about the availability also. But sir, speaking of availability, it does seem that the vaccine is available in the Philippines, as we were talking about earlier. Sir, what's your message to members of the government who might have already received the vaccine?
Well, it's a risk that you have taken. You've had something injected on your arm, in your body, and I do not know what it is. I don't know if your doctor knows what it is. I don't think anybody will be able to give a certification that you have been vaccinated. So you have to consult your doctor on what your next step is going to be, because I personally have no answer for that.
All right. We thank you for your time this morning. We do appreciate it. Thank you, FDA Chief Eric Domingo. Coming up, we'll speak to infectious diseases expert Rontgene Solante on the new COVID-19 variant found in the United Kingdom. You're watching The Source on CNN Philippines. Our guest today, head of the Adult Infectious Diseases and Tropical Medicine Department of the San Lazaro Hospital, Dr. Rontgene Solante. Dr. Solante, thank you for joining us here.
Good morning, Ria, and thank you also for this invitation.
All right, we've been reporting a lot about this new variant of the COVID-19 virus. Can you tell us more about it? Of course, the fear is it spreads more easily, and could it be more deadly?
Yeah, so I think this was discovered last September, and cluster of cases was noted in Southeast England. And when they did genomic analysis of this coronavirus, it was known to have multiple mutation at the spike protein of the coronavirus. And what is the implication here is that since the spike protein is the part of the virus that will attach to the host cell, specifically the binding domain, no? And that in itself, they found out that it can the enhancement to bind this RBD site makes this virus highly transmissible and can quickly spread from one patient or individual to another.
All right, so they've been saying it's about 70% more transmissible. But what about its effects? Is it more deadly? Would a person getting this variant become more ill than somebody, let's say, who got the older variant?
Okay, so since the mutation is in the binding site, okay, it has not significantly affect the or altered the a significant part of the virus that it can cause severe form of the coronavirus. So there's no evidence that at this point in time, this new variant can cause a more severe form of coronavirus or associated with increased risk of death.
Okay, that is at least some good news in a way. But when it comes to the vaccines, Dr. Solante, will the vaccine still be effective against this particular variant?
Yes, definitely. Let's take this, no? Because this new variation affect also the spike protein, and this is also the target of the antibodies produced by our or the current vaccine. But since the mutation at that spike protein is not so extensive, there are other several points in the spike protein that the antibody can still target and can still be effective against this new variant of the coronavirus. So in itself, this current vaccine are still effective against this new variant, but I think health authorities in most of these countries who are already rolling out vaccination program will still have to monitor those vaccinated in order for them that if there will be vaccine failure, they'll have to analyze and make an analysis if this is related with the mutation of this new variant of coronavirus.
Right, but for now, it doesn't seem that this particular variant is going to not be, or rather the current vaccines will not be effective against the new variant. So that again is also good news. Now, sir, I want to talk a little bit about travel bans. The Philippines has banned travel from the UK to the Philippines, but not other countries that have already seen this new variant. What are your thoughts on that, sir?
Yeah, I think that the government is doing the right decision in terms of these travel restrictions and travel ban. Since UK is the only country yet that has reported a community transmission of this new variant, then it's just but logical to restrict travel from those coming from UK to enter the Philippines. It's really more of protecting our entry point against this new coronavirus. But for other countries which also reported cases and there is no yet reported local transmission of this new variant, then I think the decision here is, the recommendation here is to put them on mandatory quarantine for 14 days, test them, and whether they are negative or positive, they still have to undergo that 14-day quarantine in order for them to be observed for any signs and symptoms related with COVID-19, and then they have to be checked. And then once they will be positive, then that's also mandatory that we have to do a genomic analysis of the positive result among all of these travelers who will undergo quarantine.
Mm-hmm. But Dr. Solante, as far as this new variant is concerned, is it a matter of if or when it's going to come to the Philippines?
Yeah, correct. No, in fact, if you look at this particular variant, we do not totally know if this is not present in the Philippines, and that's why one of the recommendations is also to do genomic analysis, random analysis of those positives, especially in areas with reported increase in cases in the community, because since this variant has been circulating for more than 2 to 3 months before it was detected last December. So I think it's two ways. No, one is looking at those travelers who will be bringing the virus here in the Philippines, and also looking at the local COVID positive if this variation has not yet occurring in our setting. And that's why what's critical here is the laboratory that will do the genomic analysis for the presence of these new variations.
All right. Do we have the facilities here in the country to be able to do that, sir?
Yes, I think the designated centers are RITM, and then you have the Philippine Genome Center and the UPNIH as based on our previous meeting with the President last Saturday.
All right, thank you for your time this morning. We appreciate it, Dr. Rontgene Solante. And thank you for joining us here on The Source. I'm Tanjuatco-Trillo. You're watching CNN Philippines.